The classic British pub meals we'll never forget. 1. Chicken in a basket. If you grew up in the 1970s, chances are you remember this one. A deep-fried piece of chicken, usually a leg or thigh, served not on a plate but in a wicker or metal basket lined with grease-proof paper buried under a mountain of chips. It arrived sizzling hot and unapologetically greasy. Napkins didn't stand a chance. You ate it with your hands, licking your fingers and not caring one bit. It felt exciting, almost American, but still very British. Pubs loved it because it was cheap. Diners loved it because it was new, and anyone who had it once will never forget it. 2. Scampi and chips. This was the posh choice for pubgoers who wanted something a little different. Golden curls of breaded seafood, hot and crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle, served with a wedge of lemon and a tiny pot of tartar sauce. If the pub was fancy, it came on a plate. More often, it was in a paper-lined basket. Either way, it felt like a treat. For people far from the coast, it was the closest thing to seaside food. You dipped carefully, making the tartar sauce last, and pretended you were somewhere fancier than the smoky pub you were actually in. 3. Gammon and pineapple. Few dishes summed up the sweet and salty craze quite like this. A thick slice of pink gammon steak, grilled until the fat turned crisp, topped with a single pineapple ring straight from the tin. Sometimes a fried egg joined the party, and always a pile of chips on the side. It was colorful, simple, and surprisingly tasty. Every bite went from salt to smoke to syrupy sweetness, back to salt again. For many, it felt like a special occasion meal, even though it was cheap and cheerful. 4. The mixed grill. Now this was a plate with presents: pork chop, lamb chop, sausage, rasher of bacon, a fried egg, sometimes black pudding, and if the pub was feeling generous, even a steak or kidney. All of it crammed onto a plate surrounded by chips and maybe a grilled tomato. It was big, loud, unapologetic food. When the sizzling plate landed in front of you, everyone at the table looked. You didn't order a mixed grill to be polite. You ordered it to prove you could eat the lot. And more often than not, you left the pub with a button undone. 5. Shepherd's pie. Simple, homely, and loved across Britain. Proper shepherd's pie wasn't a ready meal from the supermarket. It was minced lamb cooked with onions, carrots, maybe a splash of gravy, topped with creamy mashed potato, baked until the top turned golden. Some pubs added cheese, some didn't, but all of them got one thing right. This was comfort food at its finest. When it arrived bubbling at the edges, you cracked the top with your spoon, let the steam rise, and dug in slowly. It wasn't showy, it wasn't fancy, but it filled you up and calmed you down. 6. Ham, egg, and chips. The dependable classic. 2 slices of thick pink ham, 2 fried eggs with runny yolks, and a big pile of chips. Sometimes peas came with it, sometimes not, but nobody really minded. Add a slice of white bread and butter, plus a squeeze of brown sauce, and you had one of the most comforting meals ever served in a pub. It wasn't exciting, but it was trustworthy. You always knew exactly what you were getting, and in a world that changes too fast, that meant a lot. 7. Steak and kidney pudding. This one wasn't for the faint-hearted. Not the puff pastry version you see today, but the real thing. Suet pastry, steamed for hours until soft and dense, filled with slow-cooked beef and diced kidney in thick onion gravy. Heavy in the hand, even heavier in the belly, but loved for generations. Some pubs served it with mash, others with chips, but either way, it was the kind of meal that settled you. You didn't eat this for a light lunch. You ate it because you wanted proper food that stuck to your ribs. 8. Plowman's lunch. Not hot, not flashy, but quietly perfect. A wedge of strong cheddar, a hunk of crusty bread, a spoon of Branston pickle, and a couple of pickled onions. Sometimes a slice of ham, sometimes an apple. Washed down with a pint of ale or cider, it was the definition of a simple pub meal. It wasn't actually an ancient tradition, more of a clever 1960s marketing idea from cheesemakers, but it worked. On a summer's day in a quiet pub garden, nothing tasted better. 9. Liver and onions. You either loved it or hated it, and there was no middle ground. Slices of lamb's liver fried until just tender, piled with sweet caramelized onions, drowned in brown gravy, served with mash or chips. The smell alone divided opinion. Some leaned forward, others leaned back. But for those who liked it, this was rich, dark, comforting food. A real pub staple, especially in the 1960s and 70s. 10. Bubble and squeak, the king of leftovers, cabbage, sprouts, carrots, and potatoes from yesterday's roast, mashed together and fried until brown and crispy at the edges. It squeaked in the pan, or so people claimed. Served as a side in some pubs, a main in others, often with a poached egg or rasher of bacon on top. It didn't look like much, but it was salty, filling, and oddly satisfying. Bubble and squeak was proof that in British pubs, nothing went to waste. Corned beef hash. Another classic that made a lot out of a little. Tinned corned beef, potatoes and onions fried together until crispy on the outside and soft inside. Cheap, cheerful, and best of all, when topped with a fried egg, so the yolk ran through the salty meat and potato. It was never fancy, never healthy, but always hit the spot. The sort of dish you could count on to fill you up without emptying your wallet. 12th. Egg and chips. The simplest of the lot and maybe the most loved. Just 2 fried eggs, yolks golden and runny, on top of a pile of chips. Sometimes a slice of bread and butter came with it, sometimes not. But that was all you needed. The yolk spilled into the chips soaked it up, and you forgot about everything else. For many, it was the first hot meal they ever bought for themselves in a pub. Cheap, quick, comforting, and unforgettable. From chicken in a basket to shepherd's pie, from gammon and pineapple to egg and chips, these meals weren't just food, they were moments. They were the sound of forks scraping plates, the clink of glasses, the chatter of the pub, and that quiet satisfaction after the last bite. They might not be on the blackboards anymore, but for anyone who grew up with them, they'll never really be gone. Which of these classics would you bring back to pub menus today? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who remembers when pub food was hot, hearty, and always enough.